I used to think that in order to lead, I needed to like be in control of everything, right? I needed to tell people what to do. And my first job was, my first big job anyway, was at the San Francisco Examiner. This is a newspaper, for those of you that remember them. It was a broadsheet. And they put me in charge of design and production, meaning if a page was late to press or if it looked bad, I was going to get yelled at. And I got in this habit at one point where what I would do is each day is I would open up the paper and I would just go through it line by line, and I would pick out all of the dumb things that people had done, because I didn't actually design the pages. I did, on special days like 9/11 where things were very stressed, but most days it was other people touching the pages. So what I would do is I would go through and I would analyze, or not analyze, I would just like look at it and I'd pick out and I'd say, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Then I would blast that email to everybody at the newspaper, writers, editors, and designers. And my idea was that we were all going to come together and get better. And what I found out was people hated me. And the worst part of it was that I wasn't actually my job actually wasn't improving anything. Like, it's okay, people hate me if I'm actually making things better, but people were ignoring them. They weren't paying attention to them at all. And this led me on kind of a rather long journey. I've been in organization design for about the past 20 years, meaning I care about how we design work, how we make work better, how people come together to do things in the best way possible. And the two main levers I think we have when we're leading an organization is operations and culture. We have systems, we have tools, we have processes, and then we have that strange thing, right? Culture, which is hard to define, but it's the relationships that make collaboration possible. And I feel like if you have these two things, you can get a pretty good organization, you can get pretty good stuff. As I've studied this, it led me to a rather interesting place. Has anybody ever heard of a neuroscientist by the name of Antonio Damasio? He's a Portuguese American. I think he's at UCLA. He's been in his 80s, and what he studies is decision making. He wrote a wonderful book called Descartes' Error that came out a few years ago. What Damasio was interested in was how people make decisions, and he had this idea that if we could just take emotion out of decision making, wouldn't that be special, right? Wouldn't we all be like, if we could all be so rational if we could just like suppress our emotions. So what he did was he studied people who had a specific kind of brain damage, and this brain damage actually kept them from being able to connect their emotions. They were essentially the purely rational human being. And instead of finding people who were really good at making decisions, he found people who could not make decisions at all. And this makes sense if you think about it, because how many decisions in life have a rational answer, have a purely rational answer to them? Like, what do you want to eat for dinner? Right? It's very difficult to answer that question rationally. What you need to do is engage your emotions first and say, what do I want to eat for dinner? How do I feel? Like, I feel like eating Mexican today. Okay, now I feel like Mexican. Now we can decide on price, on distance, on how healthy the meal is, and all of the rational pieces. So what we need emotion to constrain our rationality. Then we can engage the rationality. And I think the same thing is happening inside of organizations. This is why operations and culture together are so valuable, right? Operations is kind of the rational side of the business, it's the linear side of the business, and then culture is this sort of more ineffable, kind of interesting side of the business. But to me, it's the thing that I've always cared about. I'm kind of famous for quitting jobs. I just sort of like, I get bored after a little while and then I leave, but often it's because of the culture of the organization. Like in my business, we have a saying that people don't leave companies, they leave their boss, essentially, right? And usually it's because the boss is creating a sort of a toxic space or a space that they don't want to be in. So I think this is really important, and it's going to become more important. And we're going to get to AI in a moment, I promise you. But when ops and culture are aligned inside of an organization, things flow really easily, right? And when they're misaligned, everything gets kind of jumbled and confused. And this really matters in an age when we have to change our organizations, when we have to update our organizations, when we have to adapt our organizations. When I was at the Examiner, well, actually, I was in newspapers from 1995 until 2003. And in that time, we saw incredible amounts of technological change, right? Desktop publishing and digital photography especially, and then Craigslist, which we won't talk about, that took 50% of our operating budget away, basically killed our paper. But we saw all this technical change, but we always had kind of a plateau on the other side, right? We might have to change our tooling, we might have to hire new people. Sometimes we had to change the layout of the newsroom, change the workflows. We would have to change all of these things, but then we could catch our breath. But these sort of technical plateaus have been getting shorter and shorter for years, haven't they, right? And now I think where we are at the moment is AI is dropping kind of like a bomb into an already unstable situation, right? Organizations are already struggling. They're already struggling to adapt to new technologies. And in stable conditions, we can depend on operations, right? And that's why most organizations will pay lip service to culture, but as soon as the going gets tough, the culture stuff goes out the window and it's all operations and it's all like, shut up and do your job, right? But in unstable conditions, we need to adapt, we need to change. And the way I think about it is like, we're sort of in a phase change, like in physics, right? When water boils and it becomes a gas, right? Like, you need entirely different equipment to manage steam than to manage water. And the analogy I'm using here is we built great boats, maybe, but now there's no more water. And so what are we going to do? Organizations are going to need to adapt. And I'm convinced that organizational adaptivity is kind of a core competence, especially mid-sized companies are going to need to build over the next few years. This is the space that I want to play in. Somebody said AI is, I can't remember, our last speaker said something about, start with human needs, right? AI is a work problem. It's not necessarily a technology problem. I mean, technology is obviously a part of it. And this is especially important because I think people are looking to AI to kind of like save them. Like, we have this inefficient process, hey, AI will make it efficient. But what do we know? If we add automation to an inefficient process, we're going to amplify that inefficiency. If we add AI to a broken system or a broken culture, we're going to break it further. We're not going to improve it, generally speaking. But I also think AI is this kind of gift, right? This presents this really cool opportunity because, I've been in this space for a long time and I have to, kind of betray my own biases. I really like to create places that people like to work, right? Like culture has always been the place that I've felt most comfortable. And operations, even though I've been like a fractional COO, like I've done a lot of like operations work, I'm always really more interested in, do people like to work here? Are people enjoying themselves? Are people feeling somewhat fulfilled by their job? Your job doesn't have to be your purpose in life necessarily, but I think it helps when you enjoy going to work each day and you enjoy the people you work with. This is really what I care about. And I think AI is kind of a forcing function. I think where we're going now, culture is going to become so much more important, or I should say operations and culture aligning together is going to become so much more important that companies that are going to survive this are going to be the ones that really kind of like manage to break that code. And I want to tell you about a company that has broken the code, and then we'll get to AI, I totally promise. But how many people have heard of Buurtzorg? It's a pretty famous company in the Netherlands. They've been voted like best place to work in the Netherlands several years running. And I think the last data I saw was from like 2015, and they had been voted 4 out of the last 6 years the best place to work in the Netherlands. So it's a home health or care organization. What they do is they send out nurses into your home to maybe change a bandage or give an injection, that kind of thing. And usually the way you might manage a workforce like this is you would centralize the whole thing, right? You would have a centralized center that would then send out individual nurses, and you would probably have a table that would tell you how long it takes to change a bandage versus how long it takes to give an injection. And then you'd be yelling at people because they're late all of the time because, inevitably they get stuck in traffic or something like that. And so the guy who founded Buurtzorg, he was himself a healthcare provider, and he realized that healthcare providers know about helping people take care of their health, right? So why not put the power in their hands? And so instead, he said, here, you're a small team. Here's your geographic region. You're responsible for the people in this region. That's it, right? The booking goes through you. You decide how long you're going to spend with somebody. You decide where you're going to go. And what's interesting about this is they've blown all of the metrics out of the water, right? Both financial and performance-wise, right? So 40% total lower costs. I love this last one, like the 50% fewer care hours per patient. That doesn't mean they're shortchanging patients. What it means is patients are getting better and they're leaving care sooner, right? So the health outcomes are substantially better than they are under the old model. Now, let me ask you this. This is where we get to AI. Which organization do you think is more ready to adopt a disruptive technology? An organization like Buurtzorg, or an organization which is running kind of inefficiently with centralized control? Are y'all with me? I mean, yeah. I mean, hopefully, yeah. You can just nod. You can just nod. That's all right. Yeah. So so these are the kinds of companies that I'm interested in building, and actually that I am building. So I'm building a company called Splendid Torch. By the way, this is my inaugural pitch. You're getting to hear me for the very first time. Let me know how I did. But what I've done is we're a collective of people, and I've pulled together basically my favorite people. I'm an organization designer, so I pulled together organization designers like Tiani here, who has a lot of experience in aerospace. She's one of the most brilliant people I know. But we have a whole bunch of organization designers. Then I brought together operators. This is my dear friend Lisa Lewin, who is the CEO of General Assembly. She's on the board of the Wikimedia Foundation. She's an incredible leader. And I think we need operators because operators kind of know how, like, organization designers, we live in a fantasy world, I have to be honest. Like, we're always theorizing, like, well, why don't we, let's look at complex adaptive system theory, right? And so I need operators to kind of ground us a little bit. And then we're adding in AI experts. This is Carla Ney, who is also a gold partner with Chipp. Right now, I mean, I can build some stuff. I'm the build department at Splendid Torch. But we're sort of, the idea is that we're going to be able to outsource this. And the model we're following is a model of I think of it as sort of this adaptivity cycle. And this is a modification of a process I've been using for years. But the idea is, like, we become aware of where we are, and you can work it on at the org level, the team level, or the individual level, develop some awareness, align around what to do, and then take some action. And that action could be, let's build your first AI tool, and let's find a use case that's safe to try, that it's not going to blow things up. Let's prototype a tool, let's get it in production quickly, or get it in use quickly, and let's test it and see how it goes, right? So the classic sort of like test and learn adoption. But at the same time, we can do the things we've been doing with operations and culture for years. And hopefully, my dream is that we're actually going to be able to combine these two things. So we're going to say, look, you have a broken part of your culture, but wouldn't it be great if we had a tool that did this? Okay, great, let's build a tool that does this, let's test and learn. And then that feeds back into the awareness cycle. So this is the thing that I'm building. And the thing that I built, the thing that led me to Chipp and led me down this whole path in the first place was, I built a tool called Ripple IQ, which you can all try for free until I figure out how to hook up Stripe and charge you for it. Don't worry, I'll give you a lot of free credits to start with. But the idea behind this tool is that if you're leading a group of people, you're faced with complex challenges all of the time. You don't know if you have a culture problem. You don't know if you have an operations problem. Sometimes you have a culture problem because you have an operations problem, right? Or sometimes you have an operations problem because you have a culture problem, or sometimes it's something else entirely. So what I've done is I've basically put, I think, kind of everything I know, certainly everything I've written and everything a lot of my colleagues have written, into this tool. But the tool is specifically designed not to give you answers. So it's very different, I guess, than the other AIs we've been looking at today. So for instance, I'll do one quick trial, and then maybe we can take some questions because we're kind of at the end of my talk. But does anybody have a people problem that's kind of vexing them right now? How many people here lead it? Oh, you've got something. Great.
Okay. So I don't know that this is the right audience for this, but as part of Upstate Women in Software Engineering, I am encountering a lot of folks who are part of downsizing this year.
Okay.
I'm looking for morale boosters, events that I can do, workshops.
Are these people who have been downsized and they're now out of the organization, or is it the morale that's for the survivor guilt from the people?
Yeah, it's the morale.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to say I'm having a morale problem because I don't want you all to watch me type, because I'm going to inevitably, somebody else was making typos up here too. It's hard to type in front of people. I don't know. I'll just say my team is having, all right, cool. All right. My team is having a morale problem. Let's see what this says, right? So the idea behind this as well is there's sort of like two main ideas. One is that when we're going to intervene in a complex system, when we're going to make a change in our organization, many people make changes because they saw a TED talk or because they read a book, right? They don't really think terribly clearly, kind of, I think, to the point that was made in the last talk, they don't think about, like, well, what's the real problem? What are we really trying to solve for? Instead, they just say, hey, this sounds good. I got inspired by this process. So by the way, so now we're going to be a Scrum shop, or now we're going to adopt, somebody's laughing, right? So now we're going to adopt this whole new methodology, and it's going to be this huge pain in the ass, and we're all going to, we're going to disrupt everything. But one of the things I've learned over the years, over the 20 years or so I've been doing this, is sometimes it's the really small things that have the biggest impact, and sometimes it's the biggest things that have absolutely no impact. So this tool is designed to do kind of two things. One is to help you identify where the problem is. Is it at the team? Is it the org? Or is it the individual level? Right. So it'll ask you some questions to clarify that. And the second thing is, what's the smallest dose of intervention you might try in order to move that needle? Because sometimes it's like, just get those two people to talk to each other. Anybody else ever watch like TV shows and you're like, I wish those two people would just talk to each other, and then the problem would be gone and we would all go to bed because the show would be over. But still, right, just get those two people talking to each other, and then the problem might be solved. Anyway, that's my presentation. That's what I got. So yeah, thanks.